Welcome to The Art Box, your podcast dedicated to exploring the vibrant art scene in Nevada and beyond. Join us as we embark on a journey through galleries, theaters, studios, public lands, and streetscapes, meeting the artists, curators, archaeologists, nature lovers, and cultural influencers who shape our creative community and our world. Whether you're looking for your next cultural adventure, seeking inspiration for your own artistic pursuits, or simply curious about the world of art, tune into The Art Box. Together, let's open up a world of creativity and imagination. Let's dive in.
Dreams, what if the night is about you and me? So lift your head up to the sky.
Extra special day?
It was.
So, well, first off, this is our 250th episode.
Wonderful.
So, very exciting.
And we have the best guest. Although all our guests are wonderful, this is the best one to celebrate our 250th podcast. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you guys so much for having me, and congratulations on 250. That's amazing.
Yeah, we're totally excited. And to have you.
Grateful to be
now,
here.
Ms.AyeVee has been a guest before. She just maybe didn't know it because we just used one of your poems for Modern Desert Markings. Mm-hmm. So it was episode something or another. I don't know. And here you are back for 250, and you came all the way to Mesquite today?
Love it. Enjoyed it.
And she's Nevada's Clark County Poet Laureate.
Absolutely. Thank you
Congratulations.
so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. It's an exciting time, and I'm grateful to also be here celebrating with you guys.
Thank you. And we just listened to Ashley's presentation at the Brown Bag. It was fascinating. I love your story.
Thank you.
And I love it so much, I'm going to ask you to tell it again. Tell us how you started all of this.
Kind of like my poetic journey, if you will, right?
Right.
Well, I was one of those kids that was secretly writing poetry in my diaries and in my journal. It's kind of one of those things, you know, when you learned the rhyme scheme in elementary school, I want to say I was about 8 years old, that good old ABCB format. For some reason, that really felt like it unlocked something in me. It was like a key. And so I noticed it was really at that time that now my journal entries started to take that form. So I was getting more into rhymes and just how I naturally started to express myself. Now, again, at that time, I did not identify as a poet. I did not share my poetry with anyone. It was really for me. It really wasn't until I got out of college, I want to say I was about 24 years old, that I had a counselor that suggested that I go to an open mic to just kind of get some stuff off my chest, to maybe tell some of those stories that maybe at that time I felt like I couldn't quite confide in, you know, the people that were around me. Or, you know, I think like most of us, we kind of think like, sure, I'm going through a thing, but I don't want to burden anyone. Who's going to want to hear this? Everybody's going through something. But I got really brave and went ahead and went to one of these open mics, and it was literally at a sports bar on Main Street in downtown Las Vegas. And I went. I hid behind my book, I will admit. I hid behind my book and I read my poem. And, you know, it was one of those moments where I didn't know what to expect. But after I finished that poem, I was welcomed with so much warmth and so much kindness and so much acceptance. And that is something I think that really sets the Las Vegas artist community apart from other communities, is there's just so much family. You really feel like you are a part of something special. And, you know, you'll never get booed off a stage. You'll never be met with that kind of energy. And, you know, the host of that particular open mic, you know, made it a point to kind of stop me before I ran out, right? Because I was like, I did my thing, I'm leaving. But before that happened, they really asked me to come back. Like, they took a moment and said, make sure you come back. And that was something that really impacted me on a deep level. You know, I think we have to understand that so many people are going through so many different things in their lives, and we can never quite know exactly what that is. So those simple moments of connection, that simple thing of like letting someone know that they are important, so important, in fact, that we would love to see you here again can change someone's life. And for me, it absolutely did. And so I kept coming back. I kept doing my thing and, turned into an every Monday situation. And, that grew into me writing new pieces for Mondays and getting more confident. I wasn't hiding behind my book anymore and got more, comfortable behind the microphone, sharing my own stories. And that quickly moved into features and traveling and poetry slam teams. And now I'm competing nationally and getting featured on All Deaf Poetry. That completely changed everything. And man, it kind of seemed like it all happened so fast. It's kind of wild to even tell the story now because it almost feels like, is this even my story? Like whose story am I telling right now?
And you were born here in Nevada, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in Las Vegas. So it's, even special, I think more special for me to have this role as Clark County Poet Laureate because I'm one of the very few poet laureates that are native to here. So I'm very invested in my community. I care, in my interview, because you have to go through this whole interview process before you are chosen for this appointment. And one thing that I told them is that there is no limit to the amount of care that I have for this incredible community that really took me with open arms at a time when that's exactly what I needed. So I do feel like I'm in this space of paying it forward, that I want to help other people feel that special, feel that community, feel that belonging. I mean, on a larger scale, I feel like that is how we change the world, by helping people to feel like they belong one person at a time.
That's so true. And you had mentioned at the Brown Bag that you're not an academic poet laureate.
Correct.
You're a street poet.
Yes.
So you want to explain the difference for our listeners?
Sure, absolutely. I love that. And it is kind of like poking fun at myself a little bit, but it's fine. It's totally fine. Because I think that when we think about literature in general, and then we get into more specifics like, poetry, I think we go to Emily Dickinson and Robert Frost and these kinds of people, and it can turn into an accessibility issue. People feel like, maybe I'm not smart enough to read or write poetry. It goes over my head. I have to get a dictionary to be able to even understand what's happening. And, there's this idea of the writer being this person that has master's degrees or doctorates. They're teachers of literature at the university and things like that. And that's fine. However, that is not the totality of what poetry or literature is. Literature is being able to share authentic stories. And when we're getting into poetry specifically, we are sharing narratives of everyday lives, of everyday situations. Now, we are able to use, use our fantasy. We are allowed to use our imagination and fun language and rhyme and all these different poetic mechanisms. Sure, absolutely. Those are things that kind of, what makes a poem sound like a poem. But I think there's also a deep understanding that anyone sharing their authentic story can be a poet, and more times than not already are. So for me, I did not go to school for literature. I do not have degrees in literary studies, English, poetic arts, those sorts of things. I went to school for theater and acting for the camera, okay? So, that's what I went to do. And so kind of coming out of this space and understanding that, coming out of college and having my own writing, I started to do, again, that open mic scene, right? So you don't have to have a doctorate degree to walk into a sports bar and get on a microphone. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost kind of laughable to even think that. That's not to say that they don't come. That's not to say that people with degrees in literature don't also participate. But I think for me, it's this idea of you can be someone sharing their authentic story, and it doesn't have to be validated by academia to be worthy, to be legitimate. And so for me to sit here and be the Clark County Poet Laureate and not consider myself an academic, I am someone who got my start from going to open mics at sports bars and, going to little festivals and kind of doing my thing in that way, and to show that everyone can make a difference in their community. I hope that if anybody is inspired by my story, I hope that that's what they're inspired by, that we all have this opportunity to do something that maybe wasn't initially the plan. maybe wasn't initially that thought process. And maybe some people are even kind of like, what? You're doing what? But if it feels good, if you're making a difference, you're allowed to do that thing.
And that's quite inspirational.
I try.
To everybody.
So. I hope so, because it was to me.
Your duties now, you're employed, right, by Nevada or by
Clark County.
By Clark County.
Yes.
So what do your duties encompass?
So when we're talking about the Clark County Poet Laureate, to put that another way, I am the cultural ambassador for the Poetic Art Forum for Southern Nevada. So my job is to help expand the awareness and participation in poetry in Southern Nevada. So whether that means that we are, cultivating opportunities for local writers, or we're bringing lovers of literature and poetry into these spaces so maybe they can feel like they can become writers, or even the people that have maybe before no interest in poetry. Maybe these are people who are like, what, poetry? We talked a little bit earlier about Emily Dickinson and Robert Frost. Maybe that is the totality of what they think about when it comes to poetry, and they have no interest. But what if you were able to see different things? What if you were able to see a different side? What if for the first time you understood the poems that are being read to you? Maybe for the first time you saw yourself in those poetic words. Really, that's my job, is to show that poetry exists, is alive and well in Southern Nevada, and that our community has incredible stories that deserve to be told and deserve to be heard.
And you do that well.
I try. I do try. I appreciate that.
Was there someone who inspired you most in your life?
Oh, man, my entire life. Well, first and foremost, I would have to be my grandmother, Gladys Vargas. She passed away about 12 years ago. And, she was a woman that, I don't even know if she graduated high school, now that I think about it. She got pregnant at 16, went on to have 3 children and was mom and, trying to just take care of kids in the middle of New York City and Brooklyn. She was a military wife, so she spent many, 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 many days and months alone. My grandfather fought in Vietnam and was just figuring it out. And so, later in my life, when I was able to share time with her as a young woman, in my 20s, newly married, she really was able to give me so much insight on who I was and learn from the mistakes that she had made and regrets that maybe she had, and really encouraged me to be my own woman, to pave my own way, to not be defined by other people and other roles that might be put upon me, which was very groundbreaking for me as a young woman. You have to understand, my grandmother was a devout Catholic, a Latin woman. So there was a certain box that women were put in within that cultural demographic. And it was really taught, from a very small age. I was taught how to be a wife, how to be a mother, how to keep a home, and not much else in terms of following dreams and doing that. And so I feel like my grandmother really stressed to me, especially later in her life, that doesn't have to be my story. And it doesn't matter what other people think about that. She felt like I was very strong. She felt like I was very capable, and that I really could do anything that I put my mind to if I was able to just trust myself and trust the path that God had set out for me. And I think, especially as a young woman, trying to kind of figure out who you are, and young men, young people, trying to figure those things out in life, to have somebody so influential to you almost give you permission to be different and to choose your own path. It was incredible, and I do think it also helped me to be the woman that I am today, and influences the mother that I am today, and what sort of lessons I try to instill in my children.
What a blessing that you got to spend time with your grandmother into your 20s.
Yeah. I'm very, very grateful that I had those times, Obviously, as a child, I think our grandparents always hold a special place. But to see my grandmother as 2 adult women And she showed me so much respect. There was never really, you're below me in terms of, I am the elder. It was never that way with her. I think, gosh, as young adults, we need so much help. We need so much direction. And to just be in a space where someone that I held in such high regard really held me in equally high regard. Man, it helps change the trajectory of your life, because it helps change how you see yourself and the lens that you see yourself in. And I'm just so grateful for those moments, those many conversations of me learning from her life and learning from what she would say were mistakes that she made, so that I could do better.
During the brown bag, you read a poem about a holiday celebration, and your grandmother was there. You were little, sitting on the couch, and then later. It was so vivid. I could smell the food cooking. I could see your grandmother and grandfather dancing. I almost felt like I could taste the food and hear everything that was going on, the music. I felt like I was part of the scene.
Wonderful.
And then at the end, that emotional pull about losing your grandmother, I was just like, oh my gosh, that just was such a strong, insightful poem.
I appreciate you saying that. So that piece was called Limitless Faith, and it really came about because I was invited to participate in what is called Story Slam. And it's a program put on quarterly by the city of Las Vegas, where they invite community writers into this kind of workshop session. We did a series of 4 workshops to create a storytelling piece. So although I am a poet, I was invited to kind of get more into traditional storytelling, which is a genre all its own. It's absolutely incredible. And so I was very it was brand new. I had never done any kind of story writing in that way before, but it was so fun to go through the workshops and to really hone in on something that was very important to me. And so there's different themes that are going on, and it really is about, a person that was really important to me, like a moment in my life that I remember. And with that particular piece, it does show these memories of childhood that were very potent and very powerful and fun and important, but also the impact of the last conversation that I had with my grandmother, and it was silly and fun, which was my grandmother. She was a very, I always call my grandmother a firecracker. She was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. So New Yorker through and through. She was very spicy. She cussed like a sailor. She had her own thoughts. She had her own ways of doing things. And she was very funny. She was a spitfire, really. And so it's cool for myself to kind of tap into that myself. I like to think that, I have my moments of comedy. I think I could be pretty funny. And so with that piece, I wanted to be able to reflect that as well, of that joy and that silliness, while still understanding some real prolific messaging, in there about, God being limitless and the power of limitless faith, both in, our Creator, but also ourselves, and what we can achieve when we truly believe in limitless faith.
I'm wondering if you had somebody in your family that was artistic like you, or were you encouraged to read a lot as a child or write a lot as a child? Or did you just truly hide this from your family even?
That's a great question. I do come from a musician. So my grandfather, my mother's father, who was born and raised in Puerto Rico, came to America, was a United States Army veteran, fought in World War II. He was a prolific musician. He played the conga drums, and he was in different salsa bands, toured all up and down the East Coast until he moved to Las Vegas, and he actually played a few gigs with Sammy Davis Jr.
Wow.
And some of the Rat Pack folks.
Seriously?
Yes, he did. So, I feel like the artistic prowess and just kind of having that mind, the artist's mind. I do credit him for that. He passed away when I was about 5 years old, but my mother told me that he was very close with me and that he would always tell her, referring to myself, she has the music.
Oh, wow.
So even at a young age, he knew that I was the artist. I have many siblings between my mother and father. I am 6 between 2 of them in their own respective families, and I am the only artist in there. But I do have like cousins and things who are musicians as well, or are artists and do, that sort of thing. So, I like to think it does come from that. And my grandmother, Gladys, who we talked the story, which is my father's mother, she was very prolific in her own. She was quite the singer. She had a family at 16, so she couldn't pursue that. But she was an incredible singer. And so I think that, there is also some credit there of just kind of that artistic ability, being a theater person. When I went to UNLV, it was very intense. I was a theater major, so we did vocal training, we did dance training, so I've had training in vocals and ballet and modern dance and all kinds of things to kind of prepare myself for this theater career, so it's very interesting to be able to kind of take that and channel that into different ways. I don't ever talk about this, but I'm also an award-winning photographer.
Oh,
I don't ever talk about that. Thank you so much. Like I was thinking about that the other day, just kind of looking through my stuff, and I was like, wow, I have congressional recognition for my photography.
Wow.
Which I don't really talk about. My husband is a professional photographer, and he's also highly awarded. And it's just interesting, and I think it's also fun for us to be in this artistic couple, and we're raising our children to be incredibly artistic. And so now with being with me, now my husband writes poetry and incredible poetry. And, he also draws and sketches, and it really kind of encourages me to, what else do I want to do? Do I want to paint? Do I want to do other things? So I think it's also fun that you're able to let your creativity live and have different branches and bloom in different ways. You don't have to stay in one thing. And I think that's been a big lesson for myself too. I thought that I'm a theater person. That's what I'm going to do. I'm an actress. But letting that kind of also bring me into the world of like singing, and also bring me into the world now of being a writer and poetry and photography and those kinds of things. Like it's fun to let yourself play and kind of see what sticks.
Yeah, there's so much out there.
Mm-hmm.
Would you consider being in a play again?
I think it would be fun. Sometimes I miss it, every once in a while, those little memories pop up on Facebook and things like that. The only thing that gives me a little bit of reservation, it just takes a lot of time. Whether you're working on a film or whether you're working on any kind of theater production, it takes months and months and months, even years sometimes if you're working on a feature film. And I have a family, so I really don't have the freedom to be able to do that. But maybe eventually, I think what I've been kind of feeling like my mind keeps going back to this idea of a one-woman show. The book that I just came out with, Broken Silence, I would love to turn that into a one-woman show. And I think that would be very powerful to do that. So I am kind of looking at that, of kind of seeing like how we can do that kind of thing. And I wouldn't even necessarily have to act in it. I'd be totally okay with like working with an actress, and maybe I was just the director and the writer.
Oh.
So I'm kind of thinking about it that way too.
Wow.
Who would you have play you?
Geez, that's a great question. There's a local artist in Las Vegas and a good friend of mine. Her name is Tania, and she performs as an artist, Luna. She's an incredible actress, and I think that she would be great in that kind of role. She's going to be surprised when she hears this because I'm not talking about it at all. But she's wonderful. She's also a prolific director herself. Like she's this multi-talented artist. She's incredible. She actually did a mini documentary for my poetry organization, Beyond the Neon. So, it's also fun too. I think that's something you learn as you kind of go down this artist path, that, you connect with so many other artists. And even me being here with you on this podcast now and able to really have the opportunity to create some really cool things. And I think that that's also really, really fun.
You said something during Brown Bag that was so inspiring to me that I've circled it and starred it. And so I'd like to talk about that a minute because you said a lot of artists create work or art just for themselves.
Sure.
And you said we have to allow our art to be greater than our expectations of it.
Yes. It is something I talked about a little bit
Yeah.
in the Brown Bag, as well as like when we understand that we are coming into a space of like something's more than a hobby, right? You want to take something serious. That requires organization. That requires you to be able to make a resume, to be able to have a list of your awards, a list of workshops that you've taken. Where have you gone? Where have you been featured? It can be tedious, yes, but it is worth it. That is the thing about being an artist in the modern age. Sure, if you have a personal assistant to do all these things, wonderful. Most of us do not. Most of us do not. So we have to wear multiple hats. You have to be your own personal assistant. You have to be your own publicist. You have to be your own manager. You have to be all of these different things in order to succeed. And that's just facts. And it can be, again, tedious. And I think as someone who just wants to create art, I can understand that it's like, oh, God, I have to do this thing. But it is part of it. You know, it's like, today and my trip to Mesquite, I'm constantly just like, okay, I got to take a picture. Oh, let me go ahead and do this let me talk to my followers real quick. I got to do these things. But it's like that is part of it. And so for me, I just understand that is part of my job. And so when I think about it that way, then I don't have to get so irritated, maybe would be the word, of just being like, oh, now I have to do this thing. Okay, I got to do it. Let me make sure I take a picture. Let me make sure I'm getting content. It's like it does just become part of the process. And the fact is, that is what it takes at this day and age. Mm-hmm. Right now with what's going on, that is what it takes. So if you just kind of wrap your brain around that and how far down you go with that is up to you. Do you have to be doing constant videos? Do you have to be taking constant selfies? No. But should you take at least one photo? Yeah. I did also talk about a lot of imposter syndrome that I was having, right? And the Brown Bag. So much imposter syndrome. Who am I to do this thing? But once you realize, like in this example, your gallery in Mesquite is no different or no less important than a gallery in Las Vegas. And it is the same process. So once you can kind of get over that it, sure, maybe it's a larger space. So maybe you do need to, submit a few more things or hang a few more things or whatever. But it is possible that it is the exact same size, because when you're talking about your own exhibition that you're proposing, that's what you are choosing to propose. So whether it's in Las Vegas, whether it's in Mesquite, whether it's in New York City.
New York City.
It's valid and it matters and you're good enough. And why are you good enough? Because you said so.
Doesn't she do a wonderful job?
I know.
She's an amazing poet laureate.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm trying, you guys. I've been poet laureate for 3 weeks. So I am doing my best.
You've been poet laureate from the time your grandmother first talked to you.
Probably true in my mind. I was doing the things.
Do you find solace in quiet? And I know that you have 2 children. Uh-huh. So if the answer is yes, how do you find it?
As a mother of multiple children, oh yeah. I love some silence. So I think there's daily practice of silence when the kids go to sleep. When the kids are napping, when the kids are sleeping, I take a moment to just kind of sit there, just gather my thoughts, drink some ice water, and just kind of exist in space and not have to do anything. You kind of get in the hustle bustle of keeping a home. So the cleaning, the laundry, all the things. So give myself permission to just sit there. And then I also really enjoy being in nature. I really enjoy being in nature. So that can be something as simple as, going a walk, taking a pretty drive. I am a big fan of driving. So sometimes I'll just drive, have the windows down, don't have any music on, just enjoying it. I'm a big fan of that. I feel like for me, there's a freedom of like being on the road and being like, I can go wherever I want to go. So there's also that kind of feeling too. And it's interesting because, when you go on drives with children, at some point they fall asleep. So even when I'm in my car and I can have the windows down, the kids are sleeping, there is this comfort in this space because they're still with me. Right? But I'm still finding that quiet and, throwing a sunset in there. Las Vegas sunsets are, famous for being incredibly beautiful, and it just gives you everything you need.
So, want to tell us about your childhood library?
A childhood library?
Did you have a childhood library?
I did have a childhood library.
Was it a special place? Or?
No.
No?
No. I grew up in a very chaotic home. Again, there was lots of kids around, lots of adults, a lot of chaos. I was, on my mom's side, I was the youngest of 4 children. And then with my dad, I was the middle of 4. It was just always a lot going on. My parents, again, we're talking about New Yorkers, right? So they're loud. Everything is loud. Everything, even when they're not arguing, it's just conversation. It's loud. They're, oh my God, what's wrong with them? Nothing. They're just loud. That's just how they talk. And a bunch of Puerto Ricans. So, there's always stuff going on. So even though like at my mother's house, I had lots of books, that is something I will definitely credit my mother to. She took me to libraries a lot. She always had like, the Dr. Seuss books and the Winnie the Pooh books and those sort of things. We had different subscriptions, so I was always getting new books. And so I think that definitely influenced the fact that, I had a secret dream of being published, to be able to go into a library and see one of my books on the shelf. That was something like within me. But yeah, I feel like it wasn't until I got older that I really understood that silence was okay. I think that when you're younger, you're moving, you're going. There's so much, especially when you grow up in like loud environments, that, when you kind of get your own environment. Like I love being an adult. I would much rather be an adult than be a child because I get to create my own environment. I have the control of what's going on around me. And that's, for me, the best thing in the world.
And you can eat ice cream anytime.
I can eat ice cream anytime I want, okay?
I'd like to take you back just a little bit to when you were a performing artist.
Mm-hmm. Like an actress?
Reading your poetry. You were going around the country reading your poetry.
Yes. Spoken word artist.
Spoken word artist.
Yes.
And then COVID hit.
Oh, boy.
How'd you handle that?
Okay, so I'm going to be honest. It hit me very hard, especially because at that time I had just started my poetry organization, Beyond the Neon, and we had been, working through venues and contracts for a year to prepare for this, opening. And the opening was literally the beginning of March 2020. And so the week we were supposed to open, the governor shut us down. I cried. I definitely cried. There was this grief, and especially for me as well, because at the time I was a single mother. I had been a massage therapist for 10 years. So I was a massage therapist by trade. And so not only was I not allowed to do this poetry stuff, I also lost my livelihood. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea. I had rent to pay. I lived in my own home. I had a car payment, and I have this child that I have to take care of. And so it was extremely scary. Like I think many, many of us around the world felt that same kind of fear. So I would say I took a week. I took a week to grieve, try to get my head straight, and try to figure out what I was going to do. And so after that week, I picked myself up by my bootstraps and I figured it out. In terms of poetry, I went digital. And so I was able to, go into digital platforms like Instagram and did like exclusive Instagram like features and things like that. I also got featured at different like Zoom features that they paid me to do. So that was fun and helped bring in money. I also got hired by the University of Las Vegas to do a digital poetry workshop, which they paid me a lot of money to do that. At the time, it was the most money I had received through poetry poetry was $3,000 to teach a 90-minute online poetry workshop. So it was like, once I kind of got in this space of like, let's get it done, I was very blessed that a lot of opportunities started to come in that realm. In terms of massage, I obviously couldn't massage anymore, but I had already built a relationship with a company, and they had an entire digital wellness division, and they were able to seamlessly integrate me into that. So, I was at home in like one of my spare bedrooms, and I had like the headset on, like I was Janet Jackson, and and I was teaching yoga classes, and I was doing, teaching how people to do self-massage and things like that. I mean, I distinctly remember one of the classes that I taught was for Twitter in Japan, and it was a yoga class, and there was over 250 people.
Oh, wow.
In that digital class. So it was like, that really opened up my eyes too of like, what else is possible? It's like, yes, things happen, but it's really about how do you pivot? How do you pivot when these things happen? You got to learn to keep going, not stop.
You've learned a lot of big problem solving from your grandmother,
yes,
I'm guessing.
Yes.
Wow.
My grandmother and my mom. My mom was a single mother of 4, so she had to figure a lot out. And she was an incredibly hard worker. So I grew up in an environment, if I wanted something, I had to go get it. Not because no one was willing to give it to me. They didn't have it. They didn't have excess to give me. So I had to figure out at an early age. I mean, I started working full time when I was 15 because I needed things and there was no money to be able to get those things. And so I learned how to be a hustler. And I'm someone who gets it done. And I think that is also my reputation professionally. People want to work with me, yes, because I think that I'm pleasant and I'm kind, but they know I'm going to get it done. They do not have to worry about that. And that is the thing that makes people very comfortable with giving you money, because they know that you are dependable and you will get it done. And that makes them want to give you all the money.
You've just given a lot of great advice to the young artists and poets. Absolutely. So what job did you have at age 15?
I was a lifeguard.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Okay. So I was doing competitive swimming. I started in 8th grade, so I want to say maybe 12 years old. And so I did competitive swimming all through high school. I was captain of my high school swim team. And then so you naturally, gravitate towards lifeguarding when you're kind of in that realm. And believe it or not, I worked at the Flamingo Casino as a lifeguard at 15.
Did you really?
I
Wow.
really did. And I used to take the bus from home to get to work, on the weekends and, 5 days a week in the summer. So again, my mom couldn't take me. She had to go to work. So I learned how to take a bus by myself and go to work and get a paycheck and do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
Wow.
Now that you're Poet Laureate for Clark County.
Yes.
And Clark County's pretty big.
It is pretty big.
So you have to take road trips.
Yeah.
All right.
We have millions of people live in Southern Nevada.
What's your go-to snack on a road trip?
Oh my gosh, turkey, beef jerky, and cheese. Like, how you get the little packages? But it has to be turkey because I don't eat beef.
Okay.
Would you like to read one of your poems for us, please?
Sure, I would love to. We've been talking about COVID and things like that, so I'd love to read a poem that I actually wrote in COVID. And it kind of talks about that timing of not being able to do anything, I was in Las Vegas during COVID, and there were no neon lights going on. There were no people on the strip. So I found solace in the desert. This poem is called Desert Flowers. Desert sand and the scent of fresh flowers fill the air. Sun kissing my skin. Blushing, I glisten. This place feels like home to me. Comfort carried on a warm, dry breeze. The sky, clear and vast. It echoes with an ancient silence full of life, full of stories, just waiting to be heard, waiting to be told, just waiting, patiently, like petals waiting to be smelled. See, God speaks to us in flowers, sweet and subtle, tiny miracles unapologetically vibrant. The desert is full of flowers if you know where to look. nestled in pockets of shade, existing in barren landscapes, miracles thrive. Under a scolding sun and a dusty wind, miracles bloom like tiny flowers, finding their way, always thriving, always finding, always growing.
Love it.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. I wrote that in the summer of 2020 in Sandy Valley, Nevada.
Oh, did you
I
really?
rented a
Sandy
tiny
Valley?
house and I was just laying in the desert. And I wrote that poem. So it was really special to me. And I actually ended up being selected as a TED Talk speaker. And that was the poem that I read for
Was
TED
it?
Talks.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the one.
Yeah, I've got that somewhere on YouTube or something.
Yeah, it is on YouTube.
Well, final question? Final question. What's inspired you this week?
What inspired me this week?
I realize it's only Tuesday, so
It's only Tuesday.
What's inspired you recently?
Probably my daughter. She's 1 year old and she just loves to just dance and sing and just spin around in circles. And so, when bills and life and stress, I just look at her and she's just dancing in circles and just living her life. And it just reminds me that it's okay to just exist in that space, and everything doesn't have to be so serious all the time. And even if it's just for a moment, we can also just dance in circles. And it's going to be okay.
I love it, Ashley. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Ashley. It was wonderful to listen to you at Brown Bag today and then to also talk with you, have lunch at Steve's favorite restaurant in Mesquite, the Table of Contents,
Absolutely delicious. Highly recommend.
and then to just chat with you an extra hour. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me. It's been a great time. Mesquite's treated me pretty well. I might have to come back.
You could
Please
move
do.
here. We would love you to move here. You could have your own podcast.
Oh, that would be fun.
Poetry with Ms.AyeVee.
I like that.
There you go.
Don't give me a new idea. I'll do it.
Broadcasting from the Mesquite Works STEAM Center in the scenic Mojave Desert, the Art Box sponsors thank you for listening. You can find us on Spotify, Samsung, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, and Amazon Music. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We are on Facebook and Instagram as The Art Box. We welcome all comments. You can email us at artboxvv@gmail.com. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of its hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of our sponsors.